Welcome to the Outlap podcast. I'm Jackson Lambros. I'm joined as always by our lovely guest, Joey Chop. Please welcome back to the stage. Guest. I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Joey Chop. Please welcome back to the stage, Nicole Wong.
Thank you.
And we are here today to kind of get you guys up to speed on the World Endurance Championship. If you're watching this right now, there's probably a really good chance that they are doing their preseason testing, the prologue as they call it, in Qatar for the remainder of the season, and then they'll get started, do an actual race. It's the 812-kilometer race. That's another really interesting part of the World Endurance Championship. We're going to get all into that in the nitty-gritty in a second, but my question for you two, what do we know preemptively about the World Endurance Championship?
I'm letting you go first.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, based on all of the YouTube videos that I watched this morning, because Journey to Le Mans was not available on any streaming service, so I know that it's very similar to IMSA.
Absolutely.
Yes, very similar to IMSA. It's endurance. Drivers are driving for a long time.
Yes.
There's different classes, like in IMSA. And honestly, that's kind of all I've retained. There was a bunch of names thrown out at me, but I don't know who any of those people
That's
are.
totally fine. Joey, what you got?
World Endurance Championship, sports cars go vroom, 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 around Le Mans, around Spa.
Yep.
They do endurance, they race,
Yep.
they drive, they race.
Nice.
They do a lot of that. World Endurance Championship. I know that there's obviously the Le Mans. There's the big one.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's like these kind of like smaller race series, like the Le Mans series, which happens like around the world. But that's not World Endurance Championship.
No.
No.
So we'll break this down really quickly. IMSA and the World Endurance Championships are like the two major endurance championships in the world.
Yeah.
And then you've got kind of your minor regional series, mainly ELMS and ALMS, the European and Asian Le Mans series. There was also the American Le Mans series before they merged with Grand Am to actually become IMSA.
So all these like Le Mans series, these regional Le Mans series, they don't race on Le Mans.
They don't actually race in Le Mans, but they have that title the same way like IndyCar was. It's called IndyCar. It's the Indy Racing League. That's the big race, and it's racing that's inspired by that. Let's start at the beginning here, which I am going to say is the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The first race was 1923. We just had the 100th running of that race just a couple of years ago. And early on, it was very much single class, just see how far you could go. Finishing was very much like a big achievement just to get to the end, kind of like an Ironman or a marathon.
Yeah.
And kind of the big appeal of this was, one, you had this massive straightaway going right alongside a public road called Mulsanne Strait. This is Circuit de la Sarthe. It's this massive, actually semi-public road in France. Half of the time it is open as a street, but for race day it is actually closed. There's a full-time kind of closer, like fully active circuit called Circuit de Bugatti that's kind of within the track. But it's, you'll see like motorcycle racing there, some junior series racing there. But La Sarthe is this massive, God, 10-mile track, Matt? I'm trying to remember the actual length here. But
it's not 10 miles.
8.5.
Oh, okay.
Including this major straightaway that goes along this
I may have been thinking
highway.
Kilometers.
Oh, no, you're good. 13 kilometers is what
Oh,
I've got
wait,
here.
wait, is it the other way around? I'm just going to cut that out. I didn't see
No,
that.
you're good. You're good. I'll tell you what, a lot of times it was kind of just a standalone race. It didn't really have something that it was a championship for.
Right.
And it was kind of purely invitational, where if you're good in any of these other like respectable regional series, you'll get the invite to go do Le Mans. But right now it is the World Endurance Championship, which was first established in 2012. You look at some of the really big names. It was Porsche and it was Toyota. Toyota had been trying to win Le Mans for almost 30 years on and off. They put all their chips in when WEC first started running in what was called the top category at that time, LMP1, and they just could not win this arms race against Porsche at all. They came so close, and I think it was 2016, Matt, where they were a lap within winning, and then with 2-3 laps to go, the engine quit on them, and they literally parked it right at the front straightaway, like right at the start-finish line.
Wow.
So that's the kind of drama you can get from Le Mans and from WEC, which
right.
I love because it truly is never over until it's over.
Yeah.
If you've seen Ford versus Ferrari, if you've seen Steve McQueen's Le Mans, you've seen this kind of racing before. I am going to.
No one who's watching this podcast has seen Steve McQueen.
You would be surprised. I genuinely think so because
have you even heard of that movie?
No.
1971. No. Who here in this room has seen that movie?
My dad's seen it and he does
Have
not
you-
know
have you
a
seen it?
dang thing. I
I'm
haven't.
gonna watch it tonight.
It's
There we
actually
go.
it's not that like fun of a film. It's less of a narrative movie than it is just like a bunch of like recorded footage that they scrap together into like a loose storyline.
And you're telling me that's not the coolest thing ever?
It's very cool if you're into racing, but
Exactly.
I tried watching it as a movie and it was like not a movie.
So that's like every action movie in 2024 then.
Well, no, I mean, like Red One, you have a plot. They're protecting Santa Claus.
Comparing Steve McQueen's Le Mans to Red One is insane.
It's the first movie I could think of that was like recent. I don't know, like what else? There's a lot of like really shitty Netflix movies I could just name right now. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to-
Yes. Okay. So, Steve McQueen, Ford versus Ferrari.
Yes.
Connection to Le Mans.
I mean, all of those are obviously focused around the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I'll unfortunately say this right now. The thing at the start of those movies, there is no Le Mans start anymore. So you're not starting. If you don't know what I'm talking about, how they used to do it is you would have your cars parked front to back in order of qualifying. Along the pit wall, you'd park your cars, and then all of the drivers would stand on the grass on the other side of the road. And then the race would start with a guy firing a gun. You would run over to your car, jump in, start it, and then go.
Which they took away because of safety reasons. Like,
Yeah.
It's kind of stupid.
You'd think that's a little bit dangerous, right? By the way, that's exactly why any modern Porsche has the ignition to the left of the steering wheel. So you could do that Le Mans start quicker. So you can get to the ignition as you're climbing into the car.
Wait, that's so cool.
The more you know.
I kind
God.
of feel like I should know this already, but like, is Le Mans now tag and go, or is it just like a regular start?
It is a regular start.
Oh,
There's
so
one
cool.
endurance race, I think, in the UK that has something kind of like that, where it's a
Yes.
tag and go.
Yeah.
But no, it's obviously so dangerous. But the concept of that is so sick. I wish you could bring it back.
Yeah,
but
that'd be sick.
There's no safe way you could do that now, dude.
I mean, tag and go is pretty like it's just basically like the person's already in the car and then someone runs out and just tags them. And then go.
I'll make another point about that, by the way, because another really big aspect of the way some of these cars were designed, all of these prototypes were open top for the longest time, a lot like a Formula One or an Indy car, where it's just a wide open cockpit. You can climb in and out easier. Audi in the early 2000s, which, by the way, Audi was like the 90s bulls of Le Mans in the early 2000s. They had a diesel powertrain, which nobody else was doing. Peugeot caught on really quick as well, but no one was doing it quite like Audi. Tom Christensen, who was their kind of number one factory driver, was racking up so many wins for them, all the way up until I think 2011, 2012, and that's when Porsche and Toyota kind of started to bring the heat. But the big thing was they realized we're not really losing that much time if we just open a door and have someone climb out. For safety reasons, we need to stay in the pits anyway. So there was no real loss of time.
And refueling takes like a lot.
Refueling takes a lot of time. We're so much more aerodynamic if we've got a windscreen and a roof when we're hauling ass down Mulsanne, so it's not even an issue in the first place. So we kind of saw that migration from open tops to, kind of the closed door hypercars we're seeing today. Do I have any questions at this point? Because I'm throwing a lot at you.
No,
Good?
not any questions, but I do think it's. I did want to like kind of talk maybe a little bit about how back then in the 50s, 60s, etc., 70s even, you had Formula One drivers who were going into Le Mans. I mean, you still do. You still get
absolutely.
Formula One, but it was a lot more common back then for drivers to kind of like switch in between disciplines.
So I think the big difference is racing even 10, 30 years ago was so much less specified series to series, where you could kind of get away with hopping out of one car and going and giving another a shot. I think, You had Michael Schumacher driving for Mercedes for their Group C program, while also kind of messing around with Benetton. I think you had a lot more drivers run around. I think a great example, if we go back to like Le Mans 66, you had, Bruce McLaren, you had AJ Foyt, who was so like locked in with IndyCar and NASCAR at that point. Like a lot of drivers weren't as focused on one series. And I think the ability to kind of adapt now is so much more of a gift. Like you look at Kyle Larson, who's able to hop out of a NASCAR Cup car and jump in and go do the Indy 500. You go look at Shane Van Gisbergen, who just did, the Rolex 24 and is now doing the Cup Series and has been super fast in V8 supercars in Australia. The ability to kind of go and be really fast in a lot of things is so much more of a gift now than it used to be. And I think a lot of people are really, really starting to appreciate that now. I think the first example, though, of like really like what if we had a guy focus on sports cars, at least in the modern age, I mentioned Tom Christensen a little bit. He is absolutely the guy's earned the nickname of Mr. Le Mans. Nine Le Mans wins. I believe almost all of them with Audi Team Yost. Maybe a couple with BMW, and he drove with Bentley. But I mean, the guy was very, very close to F1 premise. Audi signed him in and locked him in as their factory driver, and drove with them for almost 10 years. So, or actually well over 10 years. So let's talk a little bit more though about the cars that you could maybe see right now for the World Endurance Championship. If you've seen IMSA, it's a lot like what you're going to see over there, except we kind of split it from 4 classes in IMSA down to 2. You've got your top kind of prototype category, which is hypercar, and then you've got your GT class, which GT Daytona and IMSA, we call it LMGT3 in the World Endurance Championship. So LMGT3, instead of having a pro and an amateur class, it's just one, but you're required to have an amateur. You're required to have one amateur driver in there with you. They also need to be the guys who are qualifying, which is the interesting part. Should also mention right now that no matter what, you need to have 3 drivers. You might see 4 depending on the race in IMSA. It's got to be 3 for your whole team for the whole season for the World Endurance Championship. And then going up to hypercar, I do need to explain the old regulations. LMP1 were fantastic. Guys were building spaceships, but we were getting to the point where Audi, Porsche, Toyota, they were putting in more money to develop and research and build these cars than Formula One. Wow. And really, like anybody else, it really became a 2-man race.
When was this?
This was all the way up until 2017, 2018. We were seeing.
So in that case, because at that point, the budget cap hadn't really gone. It hadn't been implemented.
No.
No. So at that point, for like F1 teams were spending tons of money.
Yeah.
And you're saying that that WEC was spending more.
I mean, you had.
So this just completely obliterated.
It was Porsche's only real like open development program at that point, and they were able to just throw so much money into it. Both them, Audi, Toyota, and
so no one else was winning then.
It was becoming unsustainable. Yeah, if you're a privateer, if you're a smaller manufacturer, and you haven't been there since like the start of World Endurance Championship, it was very, very hard for you to be competitive.
Right.
So they brought in this new set of regulations called Hypercar, and it was very, very open. You didn't need to have a hybrid system. If you could drive it with, it could be either the front wheels, the back wheels, it could be all wheels, but it had to be based off of some kind of road car. And even then, that kind of got a little bit more lenient, so you didn't have to make a ton of them, or you didn't have to be genuinely like a mass producer, which is why we saw, Van Wall, Scuderia Glickenhaus, some of these like small boutique manufacturers go and give it a try. Ultimately, a lot of those guys weren't super competitive, and they haven't been running anymore. But we're still seeing guys try and make that, be competitive. We're seeing Aston Martin come in right now with the Valkyrie, the V12. But there's a lot of openness on that. You compare that to IMSA's regs, and it's very much, spec. You've got to pick one of the few chassis that are available. You can run whatever kind of engine you want, but You're running the exact same Bosch hybrid system that's going directly to the rear wheels through the transmission. It's very much, it's a lot more spec in LMDH. But LMDH came along so that it could kind of coexist with these new regulations that the World Endurance Championship were making. So basically you could have Daytona cars running at Le Mans and vice versa. So we see this news of Aston Martin joining IMSA this year. That's the first time we're going to have a kind of WEC specified car running in the World Endurance Championship, or excuse me, running in IMSA.
Didn't you mention like Peugeot had like something with
Peugeot does? Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now you're seeing you're seeing brands like Ferrari, Peugeot, Porsche's back, Toyota's back.
No. In IMSA, didn't you say that like they were running through their parent company? They're running a car.
Yeah. So the rules for IMSA are you need to be someone who's mass producing or mass selling cars in America.
Yeah.
So that's the issue because Peugeot has very clearly specified we want to go racing in America again. We used to do it in ALMS with our diesels, and IMSA isn't letting them because they're not selling cars. The cool workaround with that is they're owned by Stellantis, or you guys might have recognized them formerly as Fiat Chrysler. But they could, if they really wanted to, slap a Alfa Romeo badge or a Dodge badge on it.
I thought you said that they already done
and go
this.
running. No.
No, okay. But you're saying, okay.
We can get more into that also, but Peugeot's been really weird in their car. I love this so much. What you see in endurance racing as a whole is you see some guys just do these super weird science experiments sometimes, and sometimes it really works, sometimes it doesn't.
Clarify what you mean by super weird science experiment.
You have Nissan joining in 2015 with a front-wheel drive car, which is like your Honda Civic or your Kia Soul, which everyone's either running rear or all-wheel drive. That's such a unique thing that we never see. Sometimes you see, I'm going to pull up a photo for you guys. Sometimes you just say, I'm going to build a literal fighter jet and call it the Delta Wing and going to try running it.
It's just such a silly looking car.
I know, and it was actually not super slow. It was fairly competitive when it ran. So I've done a bad job at kind of separating IMSA and the World Endurance Championship. But the big thing is IMSA, despite having international in its names, is limited to just North America, right? World Endurance Championship, you're going to a lot of different places around the world. Mostly Europe, but a lot of stops in the Middle East, one stop in Fuji. They're going to be at Circuit of the Americas for Lone Star Le Mans this year. We don't see this in IMSA a lot. A couple of them are actually like distance-based instead of time-based. So you've got like the 812 or 1812 kilometer at Qatar. There's a couple of other distance-based ones, which we don't really see a lot. But yeah, you've got one distance-based race at the opener. That's the Qatar 1812, and then you've got an 8-hour one to close it at Bahrain. But you know, you got 6 hours of Imola. You've got Spa, which is going to be sick. You know, back at Texas, going to Sao Paulo for Interlagos, Fuji, and then you ended at Bahrain. So you're going to a lot of different places around the world. Which, I mean, it's the only endurance racing series to go and do that. Obviously, we have the regional series like Asian and European Le Mans series, but for the most part, no one really covers the same territory like WEC.
Who broadcasts WEC races?
Here in America, I think a lot of the broadcasts are available on YouTube. It used to be on Discovery for the longest time. On Discovery Plus.
Discovery.
I need to double check if that's the same broadcaster this year. But
are there two platforms called Discovery or like Discovery Channel?
Yeah,
Discovery Channel.
For the longest time, yeah. I'm gonna need to. I'll have Joey put up where you can watch it if you're in the States here. That's because if you're in Europe, it's on Eurosport. But
the opposite of like what you would find on Discovery Channel.
WEC has been such a weird. They've been trying to find a long-time broadcaster forever, but it's been weird.
Humane, not inhumane, but like superhuman acts of engineering and mastery of science.
that's kind of why I think they went for it.
But I
I guess that does make sense.
Right?
I also think it's global as well. So I'm like Discovery Channel, they're gonna discover the globe.
Yeah.
I think that adds up. Do you disagree? Your face is telling me you disagree.
I can see the argument in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Can you talk about the strategy in a distance race or distance-based race versus a time-based race?
Yeah, I can have Matt maybe help me out with this a lot more, but instead of, banking on a clock when you're getting on a deadline, you have distance to make that strategy work. So instead of, my when I go to pit is no longer going to be based on driver time. It's going to be based on, how many laps in or what percent complete I'm doing this. That being said, you've got a way better idea of, for distance, you have a way better idea of how much longer your fuel can last you for percentage of a race. Because on my screen, if I'm a driver, I know I've got X amount of laps. I don't have to do the math and try and convert that to how that would be in time and how a safety car could maybe hurt or help that. It's a lot more clear, shall we say, for strategy for some calls, I'd say.
In Ford v Ferrari,
Yes.
Ken Miles loses out on the win at Le Mans because his teammates started behind him to run to the car and stuff. On a distance based thing, does it distance start at where you start in the qualifying rows? Like if you start further behind from pole position, are you covering
it's the line, dude. So technically, the guy that started in the back has to do an extra 800 feet.
That would suck.
Oh.
Can you imagine crawling your way into the entire grid and you're second place and you're like half a second behind the first place and
That's just racing.
For the Indy 500, you're never truly getting on the gas to start the race right at the line. Like Joseph Newgarden in the Indy 500 put his foot down 100 feet before the line, so it's Indy 500.01.
Yeah, but it's still okay, that's silly and stupid. I don't have a retort to that, so I'm just gonna.
Cool. Okay, Nikki, you have anything else here before we keep going?
I'm good. Go, please.
Okay. I've got two more classes, because those are our two full-time. We're kind of jumping all over the place here, but going back to the cars, we've only really got two full-time classes. You've got your LMGT3 and you've got your hypercars. We all kind of know how that works, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So LMP2 is kind of in there. If you remember, we talked about LMP2 a little bit during the Daytona breakdown. And if you don't, it's a spec, basically, hybrid. It's a junior category to the prototypes, to the hypercars. They are still really big in IMSA, in ALMS and ELMS, but they don't run the full season for the World Endurance Championship. However, there is a merit-based kind of invitation system, so if you do good in those other series, you can get a shiny letter from the ACO, who runs this whole series and runs Le Mans, to go out and go do the 24 Hours of Le Mans in LMP2.
So if you do well in the American Le Mans series, or
if you do good in IMSA, in Asia, or in Europe, you might get a chance to go over and run. I think there are reserved spots actually in the entry list if you are a defending 24 Hours of Daytona champion in your class, if you won Sebring, if you were champion in European or Asian Le Mans in those classes. It's not based on driver, it's based on team. The other one, this is the last one, and this is the really, really cool one, is what's called Garage 56. I think the big difference about sports cars compared to open wheelers to Formula One is the technology. Yes, it goes to your road cars for the most part, but a lot more so for sports cars and endurance racing. It uses a lot more road car based technology, and a lot more of that will go back into kind of what you drive every day. You talk about anti-lock brakes, traction control. A lot of that stuff was initially developed in endurance racing. Disc brakes over drum brakes. A lot of big technology started with endurance racing.
Hybrid tech, right?
What's that?
Hybrid tech, right? Came out of endurance racing, didn't it?
I want to say initially. If not, it was adapted for it. But case in point, you get a lot of cutting edge technology, which is why, one, we're going to be seeing a hybrid class coming in the next couple of years. I want to say that's 2030, Matt, we're getting hybrid. Hydrogen, yes, excuse me. But we're going to see hydrogen coming, but...
I actually had no idea that we were that ready for hydrogen as a fuel.
We already have hydrogen.
I know that we do, but I know it's what's two cars? It's that Mercedes, right? Isn't it?
No, it was the Honda Clarity and the Toyota Mirai.
Oh, it's completely off.
What a lot of brands are trying to do right now is use a normal internal combustion engine, like what's in your normal gas heating car, and have the hydrogen produce those booms.
Do you mean like use hydrogen in the same way that we would use gas pumped from the
Yeah,
station?
exactly. So basically, hydrogen would be the ones producing the explosions in those engines.
I didn't know hydrogen worked like that, to be honest. I knew it was flammable, but...
Hydrogen bombs.
I mean, that's an entirely different... You gotta be fucking kidding me. If you think that hydrogen bombs...
Super
it's
tiny,
fusion, cold fusion.
super tiny hydrogen bombs.
Oh, they did make that, China did make that super fusion reactor thingy.
Oh yeah. Okay, we're getting so far out. But to go test crazy stuff like this, they have of the 55 normal entry spots allowed at Le Mans, they've opened a 56th garage and reserved the number 56 for this special kind of experimental car that can write an application, go and just experiment and kind of show the cutting edge of technology.
Wait, so it's not the same... Because I know that there was a 56 Garage 56...
We're gonna get into that.
But it's not the same car
It's
every year.
Garage 56. It's not the same car every year. The Garage 56 car that you're thinking of, it didn't get that name just for the car itself. It's because it was assigned to that garage, to that number. So it's taken on a lot of things. That's what the Delta Wing that we mentioned started with. Green GT did that hydrogen fuel cell prototype. We had Nissan did the adaptation of the Delta Wing to kind of run on hydrogen. We had a Delta Wing was electric.
They made an electric Delta Wing that was closed cockpit.
Yes. Welter did a there was an amputee modified LMP2, so you could drive it as a paraplegic if you didn't have legs. The cool thing that happened in, I want to say it was 2023, was NASCAR for some reason just decided we want to go try to run the 24 Hours of Le Mans, which is absolutely insane, but they passed it, they got approved, the announcement was made at, I believe, Sebring, and they completely converted, they grabbed a normal Chevy Camaro, like NASCAR or stock car, added headlights, added a bigger wing, absolutely made it produce so much more downforce, and then they got Jimmy Johnson, Jensen Button, and Mike Rockenfeller, and it actually survived all 24 hours.
Yeah,
Wow.
It was doing pretty well.
It was
Very
was
fast.
gapping some of the LMP2 cars and like a lot of the prototypes.
Yeah.
Or not a lot of the prototypes, a lot of the GT cars. It was just gapping it.
I also
But
want
I
to
mean,
picture where it's just like the NASCAR in a sea of like tiny...
compared to the size, again, people don't fail to like get the scale of some of these. The GT3 cars a lot of the times are bigger than the hypercars. And we can do that scaling thing again like we did with the models last time. But again, people kind of compare that bubble of where the driver sits in the prototypes to like the width of a normal road car. And it's just so much more like claustrophobic in those
Right.
prototype cockpits.
Right.
But no, it lets you do some really... This was also not the first time that a NASCAR actually competed at Le Mans. They were, in 1976, they were struggling for entries globally because of, I think that was because of the oil crisis.
Yeah.
I'm like 90% sure. And of course, because it was 1976 and we were celebrating the bicentennial, they got a bunch of IMSA and they got like 4 IMSA in NASCAR entries and came over and ran in its own class and actually competed in the GTP class at that point. And it was the first time we ever saw like American cars racing at Le Mans like that. Neither of those cars failed to finish. They brought 2 NASCARs. Neither of them managed to actually finish. I don't think either of them made the halfway point.
Huh.
But I mean, we got to talk to Mike Rockenfeller, who was the designated sports car guy for the Garage 56 program. They brought in like Chad Knaus, who was Jimmy Johnson's old crew chief when he was in NASCAR to run that whole program. They were very much like, we're not trying to win, but we're trying to go absolutely like balls to the wall for 24 hours and see what happens. So it was a really cool experiment. I'm curious to see where that ends up going long term and if there's anything that's actually going to, come to fruition as a result of that. And if not, it was just really cool to see some giant NASCAR equivalent among this sea of cars. I know you had a question though, Nikki.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask because like you're saying Garage 56 is in its own class, right? They're not competing against anyone.
Nope.
So you're kind of just there for like
You are
brownie
solely
points.
there to turn laps and do science.
Okay, cool.
You were looking at me like you had a question too, Joey. I don't know if you do.
I did. What were you talking about? Garage 56?
Garage 56 and NASCAR.
NASCAR. Oh yeah, so I mean this first time that NASCAR went up to do Le Mans. What was that? When was that? You said?
It was 1956.
1956. So
Mhm.
I mean back then there were no little dippy doos on the Mulsanne straight.
Yep.
So it was just like balls to the wall, engines
Yeah.
all out. What that like kill the engines? I'm assuming that's it was like the cars
I'm trying to.
surely couldn't be built for that track.
I'm
right?
trying to remember. It was, I think one had some kind of transmission issue, and then I think the other one did end up blowing a motor.
Yeah.
I'm 90% sure. Yeah, one of them had they had a Dodge being ran there, and that had burnout pistons. It just wasn't used to. Here's the actual reason. Because of the oil crisis, they had to run a lower octane fuel, and a lot of those cars that were originally supposed to go couldn't run it, so they refused to enter the race.
Yeah.
So they were like, we have no one on our entry list. We got to get some guys. So they sent out invitations to two IMSA teams, two NASCAR teams, and they both came over to run. And then they ultimately struggled to run those as well. So yeah, they had some Dodge. I'm trying to remember specifically. Yeah, it was a Dodge Charger that had pistons burn out, and then they had a Ford Torino, which was so close to making it halfway, and then it had a transmission issue.
Oh no, almost halfway.
Almost halfway.
Almost halfway.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic achievement.
But no, for a NASCAR to go 24 hours, it's not meant to.
It's not
do
meant
that.
to. That's
It's
very
not meant to
impressive.
do that.
That's very impressive.
Those guys go through engines so quick. We're gonna do a Cup Series burner when Daytona comes around, but those guys go through engines more than any other because it's meant to literally go maybe 2-3 races and then instantly switch to a new motor. So those guys make a lot of power for not a long time.
Yeah.
God, I was thinking of something else. So, yeah, we got to talk about Mulsanne because you made a really, really good point. For the longest time, the main straightaway did not have any brakes in them. If you look at the track and you watch the race today, going down Mulsanne, there's 2 chicanes. Up until the late 90s, though, it was flat out the entire time. And it was, believe it or not, incredibly dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Webber may or may not have done a backflip in one of those cars.
What?
In a Mercedes.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's like 3 cars that have done a backflip at that like exact same spot.
It was a trouble with a lot of the GT1 cars. That was the top reg at that point.
Yeah.
And it was just they were making so much downforce at the rear of the car, had these massive rear wings, and the bottom of the car was completely flat. So if you just got a little bit of air, Mulsanne has this little crest halfway through. So if you just get a little bit of air under there, it just wants to absolutely do a backflip.
You ever
Oh
seen
my
the movie Gran Turismo?
No.
It happens to there's a guy named Jan. Is it Jan? Oh my God.
Jan.
Marlboro? Martin?
Yeah, Jan Marlboro had the same thing. That was
Jan Marlboro.
not Marlboro.
Jan Martin. This guy, Gran Turismo, cool movie, cool crash scene. He killed a guy.
Is that the one where it's like he was racing in a sim and
Yep.
then
Yeah,
okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah.
Jan Marlboro.
And
Yeah.
he ended up being a pretty good driver. I mean, in the
Yeah.
movie, he podiums at Le Mans, I think, right? But then he went on to do like Formula 3.
Was a factory driver for Nissan for the longest time. I think
Yeah.
he still is. Competed with them in GT World Challenge Europe. Absolutely was a good driver. But yeah, you get those effects. That's another kind of over crest part of the Nürburgring where it just picks up
Was
the
that
car and it
Nürburgring?
wants
Was
to.
that not Le Mans?
Yeah, that was
Oh,
Nürburgring.
Oh, oops.
Yeah.
I mean, same thing.
No, it's okay. Very, very similar kind of
Environment.
incident there.
Yeah.
But no, we had a point where like some people were just trying to go as fast as humanly possible down
Yeah.
Mulsanne.
I mean, that is what you usually want to be doing in a race, I think.
Well, yeah, but literally some people were just like, we're not going to win this race. How fast can we get this thing going in Mulsanne? I think it was Peugeot, right, Matt?
It's that.
Yeah, so they literally called it Project 400. This was Welter Racing. And their only goal was to just hit 400 kilometers an hour. They didn't want to win the race. They just wanted to hit 400 kilometers an hour.
300 something miles per hour?
They hit 405, which is 252 miles an hour.
That's crazy. That's a fucking...
That's 20 miles an hour faster than like the speed traps at Indianapolis right now for the 500. But they added the chicanes in right before the 1990 race to keep that from happening.
Boo.
There's
no reason there should be 2 chicanes.
With the cars we have right now, and the fact that that goes right into like literally this kind of like hairpin at the end of it, it's a big braking zone.
Like this.
It's a square. It's a square at the end of that straight.
Is a square.
There's a slight kink to the right, and then you're hard on the brakes.
Yeah. And then you go back right on throttle.
It's not like the end of Daytona where you have that long left-hander. It is like full step on the brakes.
It can't be that hard. You just brake a little bit, you turn the wheel, and you go...
Matt, help me out, please. Help me out, please.
So the last corner, or the corner after Mulsanne, it goes like this, and then it's the hairpin. So
Yeah, exactly.
And then it hairpins.
Yeah, it's not that hard. Skill issue. If they made it, it'd be so much faster, it'd be so much cooler, we'd get so much better racing.
People would actually die. I'm being so dead ass when I say that. People have died on that straight with the chicanes added. We kind of go back to the quote-unquote science experiments that some of these manufacturers have been running. Peugeot has been doing it with their cars. Peugeot was very, very good in the early 2000s, early 2010s. Left once the other manufacturers got really good, but came in with these new regs. Their car did not have a rear wing. You can see they've kind of had to surrender it now. But for the longest time, you can see it was just 2 little shark fins in the back. And then they finally decided, okay, we got to do it. But they almost won at the season opener last year without the rear wing. They were this close to winning without the rear wing.
They podiumed?
They podiumed, yeah. But
That's
they
cool.
could never win. Peugeot, I really think they're a dark horse this year. They've got it dialed in with the rear wing. I think they might be a really, really cool team to look out for. They know how to win. They genuinely know how to win.
Every time someone's predicted a dark horse in motorsport, I just like immediately assume that that's not going to happen. I don't know why. It's just it's someone always.
Give me an example.
Miata in Formula 2.
You could add Mechachrome Lottery to that argument though, but
A little bit, but he was underwhelming.
yeah.
You had who else? Dorian Pon in Formula 1 Academy.
Yep.
And / Freka. Oh, Nick DeVries. No, Nick DeVries is kind of different.
Nick DeVries was he was supposed to be.
Well, you know what? He wasn't different. You know why? Because he was a Formula E champion. He was like he was a Formula 2 race winner. Everyone thought he was hot shit. He got points in Monza, and then he was dog shit for like his entire tenure. So I don't know. I think dark horses don't exist in motorsport.
Okay. Let me talk to you about who you should be looking out for though. Okay.
Okay.
So Porsche won the championship last year. Porsche Penske has been insane. They just came off of a Daytona win. They are defending champions last year. And I mention that because they're the only people who have really been able to bring the fight to Toyota, who since 2016, 2017, they have had a program going in the top ladder of World Endurance Championship longer than anyone else. They know how to do this more than anyone else, strategy-wise, engineering-wise. They are still absolutely the people to beat. So,
and they kind of have been, haven't they, in endurance
Yep.
for the past 60 years?
Not 60 years. They had a couple of attempts in the Group C era and the GT1 era. They were never really able to get it together. It wasn't until 2018, I think 2017, that they got their first Le Mans victory. Matt would know this. 18, yes.
I only saw that based on that like one graphic. You know that picture where it's like you can't be perfect.
Can't beat them all, yeah.
You
And
can't beat them all, and it's like
that was, I think, Porsche, Sauber, Mercedes.
Yeah, I thought it was BMW.
It might have been. I'm trying to remember what era that was. It was yeah. By the way, should mention Sauber that was like the insanely good era. Should mention during the Group C era. Sauber, that Sauber was insanely good in endurance racing. Made the C8 and the C9
anywhere else.
Yeah, right. There was a time where Sauber was incredibly good, and they were working with Mercedes, making hypercars, or they were Group C cars at that time. But no, they absolutely were very, very good. That's where Michael Schumacher got his first real taste of sports car racing.
So what happened, Sauber? In 2000s, they were doing great in endurance. They were rocking it with BMW, and then now they're being sponsored by gambling websites.
Yeah.
It's kind of a...
They got Audi coming, though, which is another big sports car name. So we shall see.
Audi's in...
Audi's not in sports car racing anymore.
But they were.
They were for the longest time.
Wait, so if Audi's not doing the car, if they're not doing sports car racing,
it's all chips on F1.
It's all F1.
Yep.
That's a dangerous game.
They were running GT3 up until last year. And they're still supporting some customer teams that are running the R8 GT3, but I don't believe they're running Le Mans this year. I'll have to go back and check on that. One more team that I think I really do think could do something special. Cadillac has not done a lot with Chip Ganassi in that pairing. They've tried a little bit, but Hertz Team Yoda, who's won 2 team championships with Porsche, is making that switch over to Cadillac this year. Cadillac has been very, very good in IMSA. They've won numerous IMSA championships. So I really do think that's a special kind of pairing.
Everyone knows that yellow car.
The gold Hertz car.
Yeah. We love it.
Tom Brady backed.
What?
Yeah, has his own
I
clothing
feel like
brand
I've been
backed
seeing his
in
name
that.
in recent motorsport articles, and I was like, "Who's Tom Brady?"
He was one of the big guys to back that team and help them make the move up from LMP2 to the hypercars. So
remember how was it Ryan Reynolds who backed Alpine, and then everyone was like super hyped about it.
Ryan Reynolds, Pat Mahomes, Rory McIlroy, Travis Kelce,
and then
a bajillion people.
Whatever happened to that? It just in the wind.
We'll see.
In the wind.
We'll see.
Briatore.
Yeah. Those are the big ones up front. Do you guys have any other questions for me before I force you guys to quiz me on this?
There's gonna be a quiz.
Well, I'm quizzing y'all.
Okay.
Oh.
Quiz me.
Okay. Tell me what you know off of all of this on the World Endurance Championship.
There's sports cars. There's 4 different categories.
Yep.
There's LMGT3.
Yep.
So there's LMGT3. There's LMP2.
Yep.
And then there's 2 other ones, which Nikki will now share with you.
I don't remember
both of
these
these-
by
both-
name,
both of
guys.
both of these
I
are-
literally
you're
do
okay.
not remember
You're
these
okay.
by
He
name.
just threw you under the bus, but
I
they're
know
2 classes.
such thing. This is
They're 2 classes. They're Le Mans specific.
What did you just say?
LMGT3 and LMP2.
LMG.
No, not only. Oh, you said LMP2?
Oh, is LMP2 not a thing anymore? Is it LMP1? Is it LMP?
No. So you've got LMGT3 and Hypercar as the 2 full-time categories.
I don't like how
We use LM a lot, right?
I don't like
Yeah.
how LM is in front of everything except for hypercar. It is LMH? Is it called LMH and you're just leaving out the LM first?
No, it's the actual name of the category is LMDH, but it's referred to as Hypercar.
What is the D?
Daytona. Le Mans Daytona.
Right. So
H.
LMDH, which is a naming convention used both in WEC and IMSA.
Yeah.
That's stupid. I hate that. I think it's silly. I think it's the same thing as Porsche calling a car a turbo, not putting a turbo in it, and then calling another car with a turbo that does have a turbo in it.
The Taycan.
You can't turbo an electric car, Bruce.
Yeah. I mean, that's what GTI is trying to work around with their electric car because it's not injection anymore, but they're making an electric one. Whatever. Okay, so you've got 2. You got 2 full-time entries.
I know the experimental one.
Yes. And LMP2, which is Le Mans only, and it's entry only, and it's mostly entry through merit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because I remember. I'm picking it up. They can compete in other there's what is it called? There's reserved spots for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you are a champion in one of those lower series.
Yeah.
One of the outside series.
You just get a pass.
ALMS, ELMS, etc. That's all LMP2?
Yeah, that will all of their fastest cars on track will be LMP2.
Okay, so they have their own mini subcategories.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not.
And we're gonna save that for another time.
Yeah,
because there's a lot there as well.
Just to create a mental roadmap for me, you have American Le Mans series, European, Asian Le Mans series, etc.
It's IMSA, ELMS, and ALMS right now that run.
Oh, so there's
the
no
P2
American.
cars.
Okay, so it's
your American Le Mans series became IMSA.
Okay, so there's IMSA, Asia, and European Le Mans series.
Yeah.
Which all are LMP2.
Yeah.
And then you go to WEC, which is LMGT3, Hypercar,
Yep.
and then oh my god,
And LMP2.
LMGT. Wait, what? In WEC?
Yeah. So the top category of the GTPs and the hypercars, I mentioned this earlier, those are like interchangeable at the top category. So those are like the Acuras, the Cadillacs you were just seeing at Daytona.
Yes.
And those are interchangeable now with how the new regs are lined up. So those can go run in hypercar at Le Mans and vice versa. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, I got it.
So there is... I don't get it. All right, I think we're getting to that time because we're getting to an hour here. Or I think we're well over an hour. So let's do some checkered flag takes here before we get these guys out of here. I'll say this really quickly. People online, to all of you at home, are going to tell you it's WEC and not WEC. We don't call it IMSA. We call it IMSA. So you're going to call it WEC. You're not going to have anyone judge you. And some people are going to say, well, why don't we call the World Rally Championship WEC? Because it doesn't work like that. There's no vowels in there. You can call it WEC. It's
WEC.
okay. We're here for you.
Whack.
WEC.
Whack.
WEC.
Whack.
Fun.
Fun.
Thank you for watching the Outlap podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed watching as much as we enjoy making them. I'm Jackson Lambros, Nikki Wong, Joey Chow. We'll see you guys next time.